we're going to start in different places. We have different priorities. So instead of looking at our entire house and going, oh my gosh, I've got to replace everything, maybe just start out with if you have a couple symptoms or something runs in your family.
Hey, sweet mama. Welcome back to another episode of Mom in Process. I'm your host and creator, Amy Cawthron. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this is your first time joining the Mom in Process podcast, welcome. Thank you so much. Every Thursday, I host an incredible either expert guest or everyday mom guest. Also, occasionally on Thursdays, we do some Q&As, so I can cover those in one episode. But today, for Thursday's episode, I have an amazing expert guest. I'd like to introduce you to Tonya Harris. She is the author of The Slightly Greener Method. Yep, The Slightly Greener Method, not full-blown clean out your cupboards, remove all toxins method. This is Slightly Greener Method. Tonya is a huge advocate of releasing that mom guilt by educating yourself and taking little steps and entertaining this idea of a journey, essentially, in living greener, decreasing the amount of toxins that you are putting in your home, on your skin, in your bodies, in your environment. And today I have her on and we dive into some of the basics, even like what are toxins? Why are they harmful to our bodies? What are some symptoms and signs we can look for? How long do they stay in our bodies? But then we also dive into unpacking specific areas of our house. We talk about like our kitchen, so food products, and also, utensils and plastics, and then, cleaners that we use every day as moms, because come on, like we go straight from cooking meals for our family to cleaning up the meals from our family. So how do we eliminate toxins in little ways over time to gradually get a slightly greener household? So thank you so much for joining me today. I'd like to welcome Tonya Harris onto this incredible podcast episode. Hi, Tonya. Thank you so much for coming on today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to dive into this topic with the listeners. I 100% consider you an expert in this field. And so I'm honored and really excited to have you on and for you to share your knowledge with our listeners. So do you want to take, before we dive into this huge topic, because it's just so broad, do you want to take just a minute and introduce yourself and kind of your background?
Sure. Well, I'm a toxin expert for the short title. My long title is environmental toxicity specialist, but that's a mouthful. So, but basically I help families reduce their exposure to toxins in their homes, but to do it in a way that doesn't completely upend their life. Mm-hmm. And I started this really back in 2006 when my son started having attention issues. The school had called me and I went in and they wanted to test him for ADHD, which I wasn't super shocked because I had seen so many of the symptoms before. But I don't know if it's really just my past as a childhood cancer survivor and being told to be careful what I eat, that I thought, well, maybe it's something in our home or in our diet, especially, that could be adding to these symptoms. Mm-hmm. So I just asked for a little more time, went home, did a ton of research. We took two ingredients out of his diet. We took artificial colors and benzoate preservatives out. And by the time I went back to school a few weeks later, they didn't want to test him anymore, which I was shocked. So
that's insane. Like, so two items, two ingredients that you took out, and they were like, no, he's better. He's doing much better.
Yeah. And I was shocked because I thought it was just the diet. But of course, by then I was a little intrigued. So I started doing all this research and figured out that it's not just what we eat, but it's also what we have around our bodies and what we put in our bodies, as well as around our bodies, in our homes, and the things we put on our skin. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to help parents in a way that, I wanted to go back and really understand how these toxins work in the body, as well as how the body works. So that's why I went back and got a master's degree in holistic nutrition and went on from there, because I was hooked on that natural approach after that.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. I mean, so you took your past and knowing that it was, that you need to be careful with actual foods that you put in your body. And then you unpacked that even further and realized it was two specific items that you were going to work on cutting out. And then from there, like, I'm sure you just dove into a rabbit hole of all of the different toxic chemicals and different things that we put in our body. So Could we take a step back really quick? Because I want you to explain to my listeners what you consider toxins. Like, what are toxins? And let's kind of unpack that definition just a little bit.
Oh, sure. That's a great point. Toxins are anything really that come to our body and cause harm. And the
Mhm.
way that they can do this is some act as endocrine disruptors. And the definition for that really is basically that's a chemical that comes into our body and disrupts our endocrine system, which makes our body's chemical messengers, our hormones. And so it can cause them to overproduce or underproduce, or it can block or mimic them, which if that happens, the endocrine system really controls every single function in the body. So you can see when something gets interrupted like that with the endocrine disruption, that it can cause so many different things. Other chemicals are known to be neurotoxic, which are toxic to the brain and nervous system, or they can cause asthma or respiratory issues, reproductive or developmental harm. There's so many different ways. And of course, then there's the carcinogenic cancer causers. There's so
Mhm.
many different ways that these can affect us. And
Mhm.
I always use the terms can and may, because we don't know if that's going to affect us in the same way. What affects me in one way is not necessarily going to affect you or someone else in the exact same way.
Mhm.
But when we do avoid these or reduce our exposure, we could be reducing something down the road.
Mhm.
Um, but what we want to do is stay healthy enough that our detoxification pathways can get rid of these quickly. And the great news is that there's so many companies now that are responding to consumer needs and
Mhm.
creating products that truly are safer.
So do you have a different, do people have different toxic thresholds, toxicity? I don't know how to word that. Do we, so like what your tolerance of toxins are versus my tolerance of toxins, like, or is it all kind of the same?
That's a great question. And
Mhm.
really, I believe everybody has different because it depends on so many different things, whether our detoxification pathways are clear,
Okay.
um, what our nutrient status is, period.
Mhm.
Someone who eats healthier probably has better detoxification pathways than someone who doesn't. So that gives our bodies the time to, um, detoxify those chemicals more quickly and get them out of the body more quickly. Whereas someone who doesn't have detoxification pathways as open, they linger in the body, which is same for kids. Kids do not have a developed detoxification pathway like an adult does. And that's why it's especially important for our kids because these chemicals can linger longer in their bodies,
Mhm.
especially.
Okay. And so where do these chemicals come from? I mean, does this just come from our air? Does this come from, where do these chemicals come from?
So many different places. And I know all of this sounds like so doom and gloom. I just talked about all these ways it can wreck your health. And they are found in many places.
Yeah.
That's really why I just like to talk about reducing the exposure because it can be in our air. And of course, indoor air can be dozens of times more polluted than outdoor air, even with everything in our homes that can off gas into the air, our
Right.
cleaning products, our building products, everything like that. But I also just want to say the good news is, again, that there are so many simple things that we can do. So when we hear all of this news, it's even in our furniture. Flame
Mhm.
retardant chemicals can get into the air, get on our skin. Kids, they can crawl on the floor and put toys in their mouths that have phthalates, which are endocrine disrupting. They can
Mhm.
disrupt their hormones. There's so many different places, but if we can reduce in a few certain areas, that over time will greatly have a big impact on your health
Mhm. Yeah.
overall.
So that really brings us like right into, we kind of like just really dove into this and I was asking a bunch of questions because I want to give like a background of, what toxins are, how they affect your body and, where do they come from? So I feel like that is a really good starting point for this conversation, but it ties really into your book, which is sitting here behind me. And I absolutely love it. I've been reading it and I'm about 3/4 of the way through because it's a very easy read. But as you're talking about the fear aspect and like, we're just calming everybody's nerves right now in this conversation because
Right.
your book is the slightly greener method, which I absolutely love. And we'll dive into a little bit more of that later. But that's the whole intro for your book is like, okay, breathe. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. So and I want to dive into that a little bit. Did you have a lot of people that were like, oh my gosh, Tonya, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't do this. And then they just stop and step away?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. And the first people that did it was my family, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Back when
Okay.
I started out, I started out like I came home one day and I was just like, oh, cleaning products are bad for you. So I was like, sitting underneath the kitchen sink, just throwing things into a garbage bag so I could get rid of them. And then I'm thinking, what am I going to replace them with? That's expensive. And then I told my kids, no more of this, no more of that when it came to food. And so what happened was I started to go crazy, driving myself nuts. I was really driving my family crazy, and I was making them resent this lifestyle more than having them realize like, oh, this will be healthier for us in the long run.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls. I think if you go too far, too fast. And also one of the things I hear is, oh, it's scary and I can't do everything. Everything's bad for you anyway. Why even try? But if we had that mindset, we would never start. And it just really takes a few different things. And it's really surprising how simple it is. And I think that's one of the other things my clients and, anyone who follows me realizes is that it's so, once you start doing this, it becomes automatic. Because we don't have to memorize so many things. That's what happened with my family. When I started seeing they resented this a little bit, I started thinking, what if I just started with just whatever I knew had to do with ADHD and start from there? I don't have to toss all my cleaning products, my shampoo and conditioner and all the food. Why don't I just start with a couple of ingredients? And then that way I only had a couple of ingredient names to memorize. It was so much easier to go to the store. And then my kids could still have the other things that they wanted, but ones that didn't have those couple of ingredients that were so important. And then once we got used to that, we would make another switch and another switch. And pretty soon it just becomes so automatic and easy.
Yeah. Okay. So do you recommend people start that way? Like I have this symptom going on in my life, or I have this symptom kind of going on in my children's lives, and reverse engineering it that way? Or do you recommend people start with like an area of their home, or do you recommend them, because your book is broke down by sections, topics, right? So you have kitchen, all of your kitchen stuff, and then you have cleaning and you have food. So those are broken down by various subjects. So what do you recommend people starting with when they're going to take a snapshot of their current situation, reevaluate it, and then say, okay, this is where I'm going to cut one or two things out. And we're just going to slowly make some changes.
Sure. And there's more than one answer to this question.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Because I love the question.
Yes.
But honestly, some people go into this and they have no health concerns, and that's great. So in that case, in the book, I start with my recommended ingredients to avoid. I always think that starting with food is the most important place, because without that healthy foundation of what we put in our bodies, it's not going to matter so much the other things. So I do recommend food first. But if you do have something like asthma symptoms or eczema, those are so closely tied with things that are in our environments, either something we put on our skin or something in the air. So I would recommend actually researching ingredients that can exacerbate those conditions.
Okay.
And then starting there, just one or two. And in my book too, something you get along with that book is kind of protocols for ingredients. It's a quick snapshot of ingredients to avoid for certain conditions. So you can do it quickly. But again, just starting with one, your biggest health concern is probably where I would start. And if not, then probably just start with food. But I think everybody should kind of start with food anyway. But you can move on to the personal care or, the cleaning products faster, and do those too if you have some other type of condition.
Well, that makes sense, because food, like you said, that's what goes into our bodies, like immediately into your mouth, gets absorbed directly. And it's also something that we're purchasing the most frequently. So if you can start, we all go to the grocery store. I mean, we're a family of 5. I go every single week. So if you can start by that next grocery haul, you can say, okay, I'm going to cut out this ingredient and I'm going to purchase absolutely nothing with MSG. And we're going to, just cut that out. Or, you've talked about sugar, and I mean, you have a list of ingredients and things that we can cut out. I was just using those as some examples that just came off the top of my head, but you could just start with one thing in that next shopping trip and say, okay, we're not going to buy anything with red dye in it, for example, and then kind of go from there, because that's what you're purchasing the most frequently. And that's what you're putting in your body the most frequently. So that would be that's a great way to start. Okay.
Yeah. And I call that my deal breakers.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
again, going back to my artificial colors and sodium benzoate, if I saw that on the label, then I knew to put that product back. That was my deal breaker. So not only it was only 2 ingredients to memorize, which made it quick to shop, but also now I know for sure what do I want to avoid. And just like you said, then the next time maybe replace something else. So really it's just building on top of each other. You don't have to go super fast. You can go at your own pace as long as you're making some sort of simple changes. You'd be surprised how quickly that adds up.
Yeah. So as I was reading your book, something that really debunked this myth that I've been living, or I'll just say it's a lie. I've been living a lie. Is I've been really holding on to this idea, and it's been several years. So I'm just going to be totally vulnerable and transparent here, that buying organic is no different than buying regular foods. And I'm like, you're just paying more for a label. And this is, in my mind, I'm like overly dramatic, like this is stupid and they're just stealing my money, and it's really truly not. So you really opened my eyes in a very factual way with that. Whereas, and it was when I was reading it and talking to you and everything, like I absolutely trust that. So for the listeners, because I know I've talked to other women that are the same, like, oh, I'm not going to buy organic because I'm just paying more. And I do want to preface this with like, sometimes I know that organic is more expensive. So if you are not able to purchase that, I just want to say that I understand that 100%. And if you haven't done that in the past, like that's okay moving forward, but could you explain organic and what that label means, especially on our fruits and vegetables? Because that's, I think that's the big one for me, is organic fruits and vegetables, our fresh produce.
Right, exactly. And they're sprayed with fewer pesticides, if any pesticides at all. So they'll have less pesticide residue, which pesticides are linked to, again, hormone disruption. They're linked to ADHD in children. Some can affect the brain and nervous system. So there's definitely something that we want to avoid if we can. And there are so many studies that go back and forth. But again, as with most things that I think, I like to err on the side of caution. So if I see studies that show that they do have some more nutrients, because they do have some studies out there that found they are higher in some nutrients. But what the studies also have found is not only do they have lower pesticide levels, but they have lower levels of heavy metals. So it's not only about what it has, it's, to me, just as important what it doesn't have. So if we can buy organic as often as we can, then that's a really great place to start. But understandably, if we can't, or say the store doesn't have something, that's when the environmental working groups, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, come into play. And that's their top most pesticide levels is the Dirty Dozen list. So those have the highest levels of pesticide residue. And then they have their Clean 15 list, which has lesser pesticide levels.
Okay.
So if you can buy organic of the Dirty Dozen, and if you can't, either for budget reasons or the store doesn't have it, it's okay to buy the conventional.
Okay.
And again, if we can't buy 100% organic, that's fine. Just do as much as you can when you can. Again, that's still going to make an improvement on your health.
Yeah. So when we have these, thank you for answering that question, by the way, because I was reading this and I was like, oh man, she's right and I'm wrong. Anyways, so, and I haven't shared this with my husband yet, but I'm going to, and be like, well, look what Tonya put in her book. This is true. And what we've been doing is wrong. But that's like, and that's okay, because I don't know any better. And I probably listened to some random, person 10 years ago, or maybe not even, 8 years ago. And I was like, I'm never buying organic, and here I am like, oh my gosh, I need to start really looking at what we're purchasing, especially with the fruits and vegetables. And like you said, the Dirty Dozen, that is a really, really great place to start. I will say, and you talk about this in your book too, one of the best things that you can do is grow a garden. And then you're actually growing and harvesting or I don't want to say all, but you're growing and harvesting your own produce, or at least some of it, because like you said, with the slightly greener method, it's not about changing 100% and overwhelming yourself. It's little choices that you can make. So like, maybe people can grow a tomato plant on the back porch or something, and that would be a start.
Exactly. And you feel so good doing it too. And especially if the kids want to help, they can see how the food grows. So it's such a fun thing. If you don't have room for a garden, some places have community garden plots,
Mm.
or you can join a CSA where you can go and just pick up produce from a local farm. And so check into things like that also.
I love
That's
that.
great.
Okay. I love those suggestions. So let's move into cleaning products, because I know as busy stay-at-home moms, that's sometimes what we feel like we're doing. Okay. First we go from cooking. So food, we feel like we're cooking all day. And then the next big thing that we feel like we're doing all day is cleaning and tidying up. So let's move into some cleaning products and what kinds of, because I feel like cleaning products is a big one for me, where you have like everything that's filled with all these scents, and then it's, you can't mix certain products. And I'm always confused, like, can this go with this? And so what have you done in your household, and what do you recommend for other households?
Oh, I love this question so much because cleaning has become my thing. And trust me when I say my parents never would have believed that when I was little growing up. Cleaning my room was a science experiment, but honestly, like cleaning now, I love it. And I use just a few simple things. My go-to is always baking soda and white vinegar. That is a great degreaser. So instead of using things, and I will say about cleaning products too, a lot of them don't label what is exactly in the product. And that's because cleaning companies want to keep their formulas proprietary. So it's a trade secret. So then they don't have to disclose every ingredient. You might see something like anionic surfactants. Well, which anionic surfactants were used? It's just, or enzymes. You don't know which enzymes. So really, we don't, probably most products, we won't know what's in that cleaning product itself. So what I recommend is, as much as you can, make sure you're buying what you know is a safer brand, or making your own, because it's so easy to make your own. And there's so many great things out there too. I have a couple of things right here. So I'm going to end with that one because I love that one.
I love all these. So if anybody's watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to it, pause this and go watch on YouTube, because she's going to break out some toys.
Oh yeah. Yep. And they are toys. I love them. So I feel like I could do a whole, yeah. So this is a Bissell Steam Shot Cleaner. And it's just a countertop thing. You just fill this with water. It comes with a little pitcher. And then anything that's on a stovetop, or a countertop that's sticky, because sometimes we just wipe down countertops and they still just look gross. So I like to go over these with this. So then you just pull the trigger and steam comes out, and it's gotten rid of, like, I use it to degrease my oven or my stovetop.
My goodness.
Oh yeah. It gets adhesive off of anything. If any gum or anything is stuck to the floor, because I've got three, well, they're all adult kids now, but 3 adult kids and 2 dogs.
Yeah.
There's a mess in here. So there's also a thing here where you can attach a window squeegee, and it'll squeegee your windows, like your sliders, or if you have glass shower doors, and it's amazing. So it's non-toxic. It's just water. And then it takes, seconds as opposed to minutes and hard scrubbing for any type of stain, grout, anything like that.
Okay.
So that's a simple way. Another thing is, this is a force of nature. It's electrolyzed water, and this has changed everything for me. So it's just a countertop device, and you fill it with distilled water, and then you add a capsule, and they sell the capsules like this. And this is just salt, vinegar, and water.
Okay.
And what happens is, when you plug this in and start it, you'll see waves come up, and it's, I guess, the electricity. I'm not super into chemistry, so I can't exactly explain it, but it turns it into a cleaner and a disinfectant. So not only, because really when COVID hit, I didn't realize exactly the big difference between cleaning and disinfecting. So with cleaning, that's like just swiping, spraying a cleaner and swiping it off. But to truly disinfect, you have to let the disinfectant sit there for a few minutes. But the area has to be clean first, or that will lessen the effects of the disinfectant. So for this, it's actually rated on the EPA's list N of things known to fight coronavirus.
Oh, cool. And it's natural.
It's
not full of like bleach and alcohol.
Exactly. And it's so cool. I don't do well with bleach, but this has a really light bleach scent that I have zero problems with afterwards. And you can just spray and disinfect anything. And I've even gotten stains out of carpets with it.
Oh, wow.
So it's not super pricey, but it is definitely an investment up front, but I haven't had to buy a cleaning product in months.
Yeah.
So I
I was
use it
going
for
to say
everything.
cleaning products are so expensive. So if you take
Mhm.
all of the money that you funneled into these, supposedly clean, like we could go down that rabbit hole too,
Yep.
products and put them into one product that does it all. I mean, then that tool, that tool essentially pays for itself.
It does. So I clean and disinfect. I just spray down the
Yeah.
counter with it and then I spray it again and let it sit and then I wipe it away. So yeah, it's great. And I felt really good during everything that's been going on and disinfecting, and I bring it with me when I travel, just a
Mhm.
spray bottle full of it, and it's been great.
That's
So that's one of
amazing.
my favorite things.
Okay. Well, thank you
Mhm.
for sharing those two products with us. I'll put all of that information in the show notes below so people can just click on the links and find them. And one of the things I want to add to that, or I guess question is, so we talked about baking soda and we talked about
Mhm.
vinegar. Is just regular soap and water still acceptable? Because
Yes.
I've kind of been just reverting back to like just simple soap and water for
Mhm.
like, and I keep it in my sink, and then I can just use a washcloth to wipe down sticky doorknobs or whatever happens throughout the day with my busy kids. But is that something that maybe I should be shifting, or is that still okay?
That's still okay. That's great
Okay.
because that soap, especially when it comes to this virus that's going around, it's got
Yeah.
a membrane on the outside, and they found that scrubbing it actually breaks down that membrane, and soap works just as well as
Okay.
some of these cleaning products. Some of the other brands I like are Vermont Soap, vermontsoap.com, and they have a great cleaner that's just with Castile soap
Oh,
and
yeah. Okay.
water and some essential oils. But yeah, soap and water is great. It's always great to go back to basics for that. It might
Okay.
not disinfect though, but it
Yeah.
does clean. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, how long, and I don't know if you can answer this because I mean, I feel like this is a really big question. Not that I'm not completely confident in your capabilities and your knowledge, but I'm just curious how long toxins stay in our bodies. And I'm curious if there's toxins that never go away, once we've absorbed them, or how does that process work?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I can fully 100% answer it, but I do know that they are stored in the body for long periods of time. And some of them can
Okay.
bioaccumulate, meaning that they can accumulate, and where they accumulate at is our fat cells.
Mm,
So sometimes our fat is actually protection
mm.
because it's taking those toxins and holding on to them for dear life. So that's
Yeah.
why sometimes it's so hard to get rid of, to lose weight or get rid of fat cells. But again, it goes back to also your health status and your
Mm,
detoxification and how fast you can get rid of these chemicals and your nutrient status. But um, I don't know exactly which chemicals stay in our bodies forever or how long exactly they stay, but a lot can. And there are definitely some that bioaccumulate and do stay in our bodies.
mhm. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So we've talked about food and we've talked about some cleaning products. One of the things was just your basic environment. You had kind of touched on that too. And you'd mentioned earlier, just even our furniture. And as I
Mhm.
was reading your book, I was like, what? My couch could be toxic? The couch that like I sit on and love my babies and nurse my babies on. And so what I want to talk about with that is that when we sort of have these aha moments, and you share this in your book, is maybe you can share that with the audience, the story of with your son when he was in the high chair and just like this moment that you had. Hey, sweet mama, I have a question for you. Do you have a hard time holding yourself accountable as much as I have a hard time holding myself accountable? It seems like once I'm done with these incredible challenges I participate in, or these programs that I participate in, that holding myself accountable becomes incredibly difficult. And I have heard from multiple women how hard it is for them to stay on track. So I just decided to come up with a solution, something that I use in my own life, and I wanted to provide a tool for you. So we built a habit tracker. It's super easy to use. It's completely customizable, and you can print it off as many times as you want. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes below, put in your email, and we'll send it right to your inbox for you to download. So you can print it off as many times as you need to. Stick it on your nightstand, stick it on your fridge. It is so customizable and so easy to use because I know firsthand how hard it is to hold yourself accountable when there are so many other priorities in your life pulling you 100 different directions. But what I want for you is to take care of yourself and to prioritize those healthy habits that you really want to instill in order to improve your life. So put it on your nightstand, stick it on your fridge, wherever you find it most easily accessible before you lay your head down at night. It's very, very user-friendly, and this is something that I feel like is very important for you to have in your inbox as a tool, as a resource for you to help you improving your life one day, one decision, one moment at a time. So again, the link for that download is in the show notes below. With that being said, let's get back to the show.
Oh yeah, gosh. My number one rule is no mom guilt, no parent guilt, no guilt when we find out this stuff, because I've always been very conscientious about the products I use. So when my son was a baby, toddler, I had him in a high chair and I bought one that said Microban on it because it said antimicrobial. So I'm like, okay, this kid's not getting any germs in his mouth. I'm going to buy the safest high chair out there. Mm-hmm. And now come to know now what I know now, that was a big sentence. I was like, oh my gosh, I was putting endocrine disruptors right in his mouth, right in his body, because he was eating things right off that tray. So looking back at things like that, and even the baby shampoo we were using at the time, like now I know what was in that baby shampoo. And I thought, well, if it says formulated for a baby, it has to be safe. And that's not true, because these things just don't go through the testing process we think they do. Yeah. It's not regulated like we think they are. So my number one rule is really no guilt. And when it comes to kids, and I don't know if it's my past too as a childhood cancer survivor too, but that's like my soft spot, and the issues with my own kids with learning disabilities and the attention issues. But I feel like we have to let our kids have treats. Mm-hmm. So barring a big medical condition, I don't usually bar my kids from having anything, because the second I do that, then they want more. Mm-hmm. So another example I have, and this again is my son, was when he was in wrestling in junior high. And my husband brought home all these popsicles, like full on color stuff. I haven't figured out yet how to stop your spouse from bringing stuff into the house. If anybody's got me, I've been doing this for how many years? Since 2000. So my son went out and he got a yellow popsicle and he came back in and he was eating it. And I was like, and of course my skin's crawling, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to talk to him like a person, not say no. So I just said, hey, Eric, tomorrow you have a wrestling meet and that yellow popsicle is full of yellow number 5 and yellow number 6, which can really worsen your asthma symptoms. So I just want you to know that, like, today at practice or tomorrow at that meet, like, you don't want that to affect your ability tomorrow. And he's like, well, you're right. And he kind of looked at it and he went and he threw it away. So I was like, hallelujah. I know. So what I've really found is the second you tell your kids or your spouse or yourself, you cannot have anything anymore, they're going to resent it, and they're going to resent this healthier lifestyle, and they're going to rebel against it. And I know I have, nobody's going to tell me I can't have my pizza. So, or anything like that. So if we just do things in moderation, and if we can talk to our kids and maybe let them know why we're saying this is not a good idea. Because also, if you say no more cookies ever again, we're not doing that anymore, they're also going to go to a friend's house, or they're going to go to an event that has cookies, and they're going to eat 1 million cookies. Whereas if they didn't think it was not allowed, they would just have a normal amount, if any. So I don't remember exactly where I was going with that, but no, just to say no mom guilt. And also, we can't control everything, and we can't avoid everything. Right. So that's why I really believe in the no mom guilt and just not saying no. Yeah. Very often.
Well, I want to parallel that with the personal story too, Tonya, because our daughter has neurofibromatosis type 1. So it's a disease that she was diagnosed with a couple of years ago. And so when I started down this rabbit hole of like, what can we do? Because I was the same, like, food is medicine, but food can also be super toxic. So what are some of the things that we can cut out? And one of the first things, because neurofibromatosis, they have a higher likelihood of growing tumors on any nerve in their body, because she's missing the tumor suppressor in her genes, is what that is, to kind of give a little bit of background. And she's perfectly healthy and happy right now. Everything is fine. But I mean, when you get that diagnosis, I'm sure this was kind of the same when you got the diagnosis for your son, or the conversation from the teacher on your son at school, you're like, oh my goodness, what can I do? There has to be something. And as a mom, we want to fix it, right? We want to like dive down and figure out how to fix it. And one of the first things that I figured out was sugar. And so I went through this mad dash, told all the grandparents, all of our friends, we threw out everything in the house or most everything that had sugar in it. And then I was like, no candy. And that lasted for just a pretty short period of time because I realized like, this isn't sustainable. And all I'm going to do, especially where I couldn't have that more like adult conversation with her at the time because she was 4.
Right.
She's 6 now, but even now at 6, I can't, it's very difficult to get through to them the fact that you have this genetic disease. And if you have sugar, there's a likelihood that you could have a tumor. You know what I mean? It's just very hard to navigate that conversation without creating fear in her. So finally I was like, you know what, if we bake homemade cookies, we're going to have homemade cookies. There's something so cozy about that. But that just means I'm not going to go to the grocery store and buy packages of Oreos because I know what goes into our cookies at home if I'm buying the specific ingredients to go into those cookies. But the Oreos, they are packed full of toxins and stuff that is just not healthy for us, regardless of the toxins. So that's sort of my parallel story. And like, I dove down to this rabbit hole, cut all of the sugar, got rid of everything, bought all these products. And then I was like, this is scaring everybody. It's confusing everybody. So there has to be a way to find a healthier balance, I guess, in it. So that makes me feel so much better as I'm reading your book that like, no, it's okay that like you said in your book, you have a hot dog every once in a while, or you have pizza every once in a while, as long as you're making healthier choices within that. Because you talk about hot dogs as one of your example, but you choose a healthier variety or a healthier brand.
Exactly. And I love the point you're making because a lot of times with our kids, and especially my son, when he was in 2nd grade, I sure didn't tell him this is because, you're having attention issues.
Yes.
Home at school. So it's a
Yeah.
great point that we can't tell them all the time. But the thing we can do is just kind of just sneakily buy that safe, not sneaky, but, not tell them that we bought a safer brand, one that doesn't have all those toxins, or like you're saying, you're still going to make your cookies because it's cozy and it's a family tradition, but you're buying ingredients that are safer rather than going to the store and buying store-bought. And I think that's really where it comes into play, that we have more control than we think we do. And the other thing that I like to do too is make things convenient for your kids. So if you can like cut up carrots and have a good yummy dip for them, or make your own dip, keep those on a low shelf in the fridge so they can just easily grab them. They'll go for those rather than some of the processed foods, and have a healthy snack bowl, or put grapes on the counter. And it's surprising what they'll go for when that stuff is around. And so I love your point of, we don't necessarily have to tell them when they're not old enough, or if we don't, for some reason, don't want to put that fear factor into them, but just by swapping those things out and making it an occasional treat, then it's again, we can keep going on with our lives, but also do it in a more healthy way.
So what advice do you have for the mom that's going to start out down this road and feels like she's, dove too deep, maybe gone too far, and now she is feeling the mom guilt, feeling the fear, probably, I mean, honestly, probably angry and confused. I mean, because for me, there's a lot of anger with the FDA and, just all of these organizations that are supposed to be helping us put good foods in our bodies that we feel like we can trust. And now I'm like, I don't trust anybody, so what advice do you have for the mom that's kind of in this, I'll just say like overall dark place with everything, instead of looking at it like, no, now I have control.
Right. I love that so much, because I feel like I'd be talking to myself, 15, 16 years ago, but also even researching this book. And I know, a lot of these things from being in this field for so long, but I was so mad. I started crying a couple of times when I wrote this book, because I looked at some of the studies that I hadn't seen before. And I'm like, this is so wrong. But for the mom who's just starting out and thinking like, I don't even know where to start, I don't know what to do, it's just too much, and then again, like you said, the anger is, I would just say it's a journey, and don't expect to be perfect right off the bat. Like if you do something, but then you maybe eat something you said you weren't going to, your kids do, that's okay. Just start when you can again. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. What what's right for me might not be right for you. And that's what I feel so strongly about, and why I wrote my book, is that we're going to start in different places. We have different priorities. So instead of looking at our entire house and going, oh my gosh, I've got to replace everything, maybe just start out with, if you have a couple symptoms or something runs in your family, or, and really dig in and find those ingredients that you should avoid. And again, starting with your food. But I would really tell someone that it's a journey, and your family might not always be on board. And I mean, my kids are, they're old now, 18, 19, and 24. So, and last summer, one of my kids said, are we ever going to have a normal house? Because my husband brought home dish soap that I was like, what did you do? And I'm like, I've got a book for you to read. I mean, that's all.
Right.
Like, look at the label. But it was one of those things where he got greenwashed. So he does try to buy safer, but I was like, not this. And my daughter's like, when are we ever going to have a normal house? And I was like, our dish soap affects you,
right.
So just know your family might not always be on board, but if you just keep making those small switches, eventually you're going to have a healthier kitchen, healthier personal care and beauty products, and then healthier cleaning products. Because another thing with those cleaners that I didn't mention is we don't need a different cleaner for every single surface like we've been marketed to.
Right.
It's good to just keep things simple, and the simpler we keep them, the easier this lifestyle becomes. Because honestly, for me, I know exactly what brands I should be buying. I know exactly what ingredients I should be avoiding, and I only have a few cleaning products. So to me, this lifestyle is way easier.
Yes. I love that advice so much. I had to check my thoughts. I had to like really refocus my thoughts when I was kind of reading the book and going through things. And I kept going back to your very beginning of like, take a breath. It's okay. This is a journey. So, I mean, even for me, I absolutely kept reverting back to that for sure. Now, let me ask you a question. How long ago did you kind of start this journey? So how long has it been?
Since 2006. My son was in second grade, and he's 24 now.
Okay. So 2006. And do you feel like now your journey is like, I've arrived, I know exactly like all of these products, or is it something that still shifts and still changes the more knowledge that you receive?
Oh, I haven't been asked that. That's a great one too. I would say it still shifts, because I feel like I know what I know, so I have a good basis, but I know I don't know everything. There's always something more to learn. And the other thing is, I'm set with my products, but at the same time, the exciting thing to me is that so many companies are coming forward and either changing their formulations, or there's just brand new companies popping up all over the place that have all of these new amazing products that truly are safer. So I feel like my research hasn't ended, and my product search has not ended. So I love that question. But I mean, and even sometimes you have to reevaluate. And that's why I recommend like going through the book, and then you might want to read parts of it again, because you're going to add more layers, because sometimes, and not all the time. So I always say too, always check with your doctor. For instance, like if your ADHD symptoms maybe lessen, don't go off your medicine when, maybe some dietary changes happen. That definitely has to be done with a doctor. But sometimes like maybe a little bit of eczema goes away when you stop using a certain ingredient, or your hair starts growing in because you stopped using sodium lauryl sulfate. So it kind of layers too. So I feel like you're never going to be completely done, because there's always more you can do, and your needs might change. Throughout.
I feel like, I mean, the only way that you're going to ever avoid everything all the time is if you live in like a grass hut, in the middle of nowhere and live off grid. And like, that's not how we live now, so it's always going to be something. And I'll just add to that too. My understanding is, the products that we feel like are quotes like safe are changing, like BPA, for example. And what's the other one? Can you talk about that a little bit? Because BPA, what is not allowed. You explain that.
Sure. Well, this is one that made me mad. So BPA free.
Yeah.
BPA stands for bisphenol A, and that's something that's added to plastics usually. So you can see them in food storage containers, but also one of the biggest sources through that is through food, because a lot of times it's in the epoxy lining of metal cans, so that the metal doesn't touch the food. Okay. So, but it's something that it's linked to so many different things. And again, some studies shows it is, some studies show it's not, but I like to err on the side of caution. But things like diabetes, ADHD, things like that. So an endocrine disruption. So BPA free, when you see that on a plastic product, it doesn't mean it's BPA free. It might be bisphenol A free, but a lot of times what they do is they add bisphenol S or bisphenol F, which have similar, if not stronger, health effects. So, or hormone disruption effects.
That makes me so
So
mad.
I know, me too. So like glass and stainless steel if you can.
Yes.
Avoid canned foods as much as possible. So
Mhm.
things like that. But I mean, yeah, that's another thing is sometimes that's why it's so important for us to educate ourselves as consumers and as parents, because there's so many things out there that are so tricky and
Mhm.
labels and ingredients. So, and hidden
Yeah.
ingredients.
Yeah. So you mentioned greenwashing earlier. So
Mhm.
what is greenwashing?
Greenwashing is basically if you see something on a label that makes you think something is natural or non-toxic and it's not. I see it a lot.
Lies. It's a
Yeah,
lie.
lies. I see it a lot with cosmetics. I see it a lot with cleaning products, but there's things in cosmetics too that and cleaning products that I call hidden toxins because while I'll use formaldehyde as an example, that's a known cancer causer. We would never buy a product that contains formaldehyde in it.
Mhm.
Yet some of our products have it because what they do is they use these preservatives called formaldehyde releasers that release formaldehyde into the product over a period of time. And that's what's preserving that product. So
Mm.
while they did not add formaldehyde, technically, they added something that's releasing it into our product. And the longer we have that product, or if it's exposed to light, more formaldehyde is released. So again, it goes back to that's why it's so important for us to educate ourselves because there's so many things, the greenwashing and what labels mean. And
Mhm.
is this ingredient something like DMDM hydantoin is one that's a formaldehyde releaser, but we wouldn't know that formaldehyde is going to that product. So
Yeah.
really it's just important to understand these things and know what to be on the lookout for because it
Yeah.
can be tricky at first.
So you should correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So this is something that I do. And again, like I'm not perfect at this. I have definitely a lot of work to do. But if I pick up a product, especially cleaning products,
Mhm.
because they're so harsh, I feel like, and we're inhaling them. And if I can't pronounce, it could be even food, but if there's like a whole slew of things that I can't pronounce on there, then I'm like, I don't know what that is. Can't even pronounce that. Have never heard of that. And it like goes right back on the shelf. And
Right.
I mean, is that like a good rule of thumb, or are some of those bigger words that I don't know how to pronounce, are they possibly good for us? Or is that an okay way to shop, or kind of a direction we can start?
It's a great guideline, that's for
Okay.
sure. But some of those longer, hard to pronounce ones aren't toxic necessarily.
Okay.
So I
Mhm.
like what you're saying. But at the same time, if there's a bunch of them, and the way I set it up too, and I know the book has a website. I don't know if you check that out.
Mhm.
But it's got like cheat sheets and guides. So there's things
Yes.
that I can scan a label so quickly because now I know, there's an ingredient that ends in ETH. I don't want that. That's linked to 1,4-dioxane, which is a potential cancer causer, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So there's certain things that you can memorize really fast. So if you see just a few of those on the label, then you know that that's probably an ingredient to avoid.
Mhm.
Um, just because again, some of those that are really long surprised me too, that they're not all necessarily toxic.
Yeah. Okay. That's so interesting. So your book was so good about laying that out, and with the cheat sheets and the dirty dozen and the website link and everything. And like you can just print those, you can put them in like your little planner or little book when you go, or even just like attach it to your grocery list and you can just have it there. But I feel like if you did this, 4 or 5 times, like you said, it's a journey. So if you do this a couple of times and take your sheet and really kind of educate yourself on the labels, then you're going to go through probably the same grocery store that you go to every time. And you're just going to know, I'm not buying these cans of tomatoes. I'm going to buy this jar of tomatoes. Or I know I'm not going to buy these bananas over here. I already looked at the label, and it starts with you in your book, you talk about the numbers 4 and 6. And so I'm going to buy these bananas over here, and vice versa. So most of us are creatures of habit. So we
Mhm.
shop at the same place. And I'm thinking like we're in Idaho. And so we have a Winco here in Idaho. And so I know the whole layout of that store. I could probably shop there. Well, I probably shopped there in my dreams because that's part of my role. But I mean, I know where everything is. So if I'm like, okay, I looked at these noodles and I'm not going to buy these, but I've done the research and I looked at these. So these are the ones that I'm just going to naturally pick up. So I just want to kind of paint the picture of like, it seems really overwhelming when you go about this like the first time. So maybe give yourself like an extra 45 minutes to an hour of shopping, like that first time or two. But the next time you go, you're already going to know, like, I'm not going to buy this product. I'm going to buy this one, or I'm not going to buy this product. I'm going to buy this one, because you've already done the research on it.
Right. And I think that, when you do the research ahead of time, so looking at the sheets, I actually have one sitting right here because I print all these out just to have on hand because there's so many different ingredients.
Yeah.
But it's listed like this. So you get a quick glance of what the ingredient is, what it's found in, what the health effects are. So really you can write this out really quickly. Like if you have eczema, just look for the ingredients on that page that are linked to eczema. Or again, for me, hyperactivity with ADHD and attention issues, just look for that ingredient, write that down, because that's your deal breaker. If it has that, you're not getting that. So it just takes a little bit of prep at the beginning. But again, now I can look at a label and I know so many ingredients off the top of my head just because I just did a little bit at a time, memorized a little bit at a time. So, or wrote it down with me.
Yeah. And taking that and applying it for kind of what I've done, like working through parts of your book, is you talk about plastic and heating plastic and cooling plastic. And so what I did that I feel good about, and I know that I have steps to take, still a lot of steps to take, but I went through and I got rid of all of the kids' plastic plates and bowls. So anything that they're eating on, and now, especially where Lily's 3, she's a little bit older and she's been eating on adult plates for a while, but I just got rid of all of that. And we have mason jars and we have our regular plates. And that to me felt really good. And we transitioned out of plastic water bottles and we're, doing stainless steel water bottles, and just like little steps. Like I could look in my kitchen and still say, oh my goodness, I probably need to get rid of that and that, but the point isn't to go in and like on this huge overhaul. It's to just work on it a little bit at a time. And so, maybe when you're doing the dishes and you're like, oh, I still have a plastic cup here. Okay. Instead of like pulling this out of the dishwasher or pulling it out of the sink, I'm just going to put it in the donate box, or, recycling, or however people want to dispose of them properly, just like a little bit at a time, instead of feeling like you need to go in and spend 3 hours that day, like tearing apart your kitchen.
Exactly. And again, just choose your 1 or 2 most used items. So when it comes to food plastic storage containers too, look at which sizes you use most, and just replace those first, or your most used plastic water bottles, reusable water bottles, and just replace those first. So then that way you're not replacing everything all at once. You're just doing your top 1 or 2 most used items. Same thing with food. Like if you have, I'll say hot dogs again, dogs. A lot. Just if that's one of your top most consumed items, then replace that first with a safer brand, or just, for an occasional treat. So just go in and just really look for those things that you use most often and replace those first instead of everything.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, this is definitely something that, this podcast and this conversation, I just really don't want moms to get overwhelmed with and feel like that they've done something wrong, or like they don't know where to start, which is why, I really encourage people to start with your book and just take slow steps, like with what you're doing. And Tonya, all of this advice that you're giving us is absolutely amazing. I know that I have work to do because I'm a mom in process, and, we all have work to do as we continue to learn. Is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners that we didn't cover? I know that we didn't cover like dozens of topics that we could have talked about, but is there anything else that you would like to share in addition to this?
I think just the overall thing is we did talk about so much, and I know it's overwhelming. And my thing is just exactly what you just said, is it can be overwhelming, but just take those small steps at a time. We don't have to be perfect, and we can't avoid everything, but if we just think about it in those smaller incremental steps, that creates more sustainable change that we can do over time, rather than if we just try to go in super gung-ho about it, like I try to. That doesn't work.
Scare the heck out of your family.
Yourself, your family, your kids, like your dogs, everything. So just taking those small steps. And again, no parent guilt when we find out this stuff. We did the best we can when we were doing it, just like me buying my baby shampoo or putting my son in that high chair. I did what I thought was right. It turns out maybe that wasn't the best thing to be doing, but I already kicked myself. But now I'm like, but I did what I could. And now that I know better, I do better. Like that Maya Angelou quote. Yes. So if we just think along those lines and just take that pressure off ourselves to be perfect, it just becomes easy, and it's fun. So we don't have to be in our kitchens wearing, with the apron all day long, cooking and DIYing our own things. There's so many great products out there if we just want to go buy something simply. Or like I said, I can't cook. I think I said it in the book. I cannot cook. I'm not a great cook, but I can make 22 chapsticks in 4 minutes. So
Yes.
it's just like, just do your level of comfort. And it becomes so much easier.
Yes, I love that advice. Tonya, I wanted to also take just a second and congratulate you on your newest article in the Better Homes and Gardens magazine, which is so exciting. I get that magazine myself. So it's so awesome to have you on the podcast. But so if people want to find you, they can check out that magazine article also. What did you cover in that? What was the topic of that article?
Oh, sure. Well, I got interviewed for that article for, it was called The Nose, I believe, which I love that topic too, because it's just talking about how to freshen up indoor air. So I gave some of my tips for a non-toxic way, like opening windows or the baking soda to absorb odors. So that's what that was about in Better Homes and Gardens.
Oh, that's awesome. That's such a big magazine. So congratulations for being
thank you. I
interviewed
was so
for that.
excited.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's amazing. So they can check you out there in the latest magazine that they're offering. And then where can they find your book and where can they check you out?
The book is available anywhere books are sold. So you can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble, just about anywhere, bookshop.org. And you can find me, I think on Instagram, I'm Slightly Greener. And I think on Facebook, I'm Tonya Harris. I know I'm Slightly Greener, but I think the username is Tonya Harris.
Okay.
Those are probably the best places to find me.
That's great. Okay. And I'll put all of your information in the show notes too, so people can find you. And if they have any questions, they can reach out. But you're a wealth of information. Thank you so much for sharing it with me. And I know we just scratched the surface, but I hope that it helps people kind of shift their perspectives on certain things and really helps give them a path to go down, like a direction of a resource that they can acquire in order to, gain more knowledge and do additional research. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Tonya.
That's good. Thank you.
Hey, sweet mama, thank you so much for joining Tonya and I in this conversational journey, all focused around the Slightly Greener method, her book, and also her ideology behind eliminating and decreasing the amount of toxins that you have in your household and in your environment for yourself and your family. So if you found value in today's conversation, I highly encourage you to go purchase Tonya's book. I will put all of the information to contact her and to purchase her book in the show notes below. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to try and connect with Tonya as well. She has some very exciting opportunities coming up for you to learn more. And her book in and of itself is a beautiful wealth of knowledge. One of the things that her and I actually talked about after we ended our recording was just this abundance of free, quote, free material out on the internet, but some of it is untrustworthy. And one of the things that I thought about is from a personal standpoint is I go down these huge rabbit holes when I look something up on Pinterest or try and Google something. And one of the beautiful things that I love about Tonya's book is it's like a one-stop shop resource. If I have questions, I can go to it. If I need a resource to take to the grocery store with me, I can go to the website and I can print off a list. She just lays everything out so simply and free of fear, free of judgment. And I highly encourage you to find one resource that helps you, because when I get onto Pinterest or when I get onto Google, that is really when the fear starts coming in and the guilt starts coming in. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Tonya is amazing. She was such a wealth of knowledge, and I can't thank her enough for coming on and sharing that with us. Thank you so much for listening today, sweet mama. I look forward to talking to you all again very soon.